Hello YouTube. So today I thought I'd do a new top 10 and I thought I'd talk about despicable fictional characters. And before I get right into it, I just wanted to say a couple of things about the criteria. This list will not have classic villains which we all love and are well known, like Magneto and the Joker and so on and so forth, because while those characters do things that are horrible and despicable, we also like them, whether it is because they are relatable or because they are cool and charismatic or so extreme that they don't even seem human. There's a lot of reasons, but we like those villains. This is not a list of that kind. This is a list of characters which you hate, you find irritating, horrible, selfish, cowardly, a whole lot of things. They don't have much charisma, and even if they do, it's not enough to save them from being, in my opinion, horrible and mostly unlikable. Some of these are meant to be hated, the great characters, because you enjoy hating them, and I'll give credit to those characters. A couple of these characters are disturbing because they were meant to be the main focus of the story, or one of the main focus of the stories, and they were meant to be identifiable, but they're horrible. And then there's a couple of characters which I think were written to be hated, were written to be bad, but disturbingly enough they still have a cult following as sort of heroes or anti-heroes. So, without further ado, this is my top 10 most despicable fictional characters. Number 10 is Lois Griffin from Family Guy. Now, this character, I think, started off as a fairly normal character, and the writers realized that people were starting to find Lois Griffin pretty horrible, and they just went with it. And nowadays, she's just despicable. She's very mean to her kids, very cold and apathetic, very cold and uncaring, and she's mean and she's very passive aggressive. She doesn't seem to care much about her family. She's very selfish. She has done a lot of horrible things, and she's pretty much driven by her desires and her petty little interests at the expenses of people around her. And I'm not saying that she's not she can't be interesting or have funny jokes around her, but most of the time I find myself hating her. And one of my favorite episodes is the episode where Meg finally tells her all she thinks about her as a mother and as a person, and that's a great episode. And yeah, horrible character, I can't stand her. Number 9 is Janet from My Wife and Kids. Now, My Wife and Kids is a TV show, a sitcom, and it's fun, I enjoyed it, but it's obviously nothing huge, nothing special. It's not on par with, say, Malcolm in the Middle or The Simpsons. But I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed most of the characters. However, Janet, the mother from the family, can be really despicable as a character. The thing that they do often in this series, and this is a writing problem. It's a fictional character. The fault goes mostly to the writing, unless it's a terrible actress. And she's not. She's a good actress. It's not her fault. It's the lines. The thing about Janet is that she always makes a huge deal about things, about other people's flaws, and when she does a mistake, nobody can say anything. So she treats people horribly for mistakes, sometimes serious, sometimes not. But when she makes a mistake, she gets angry at other people for being angry at her, or she sort of turns it around on them, and so she's never wrong. And there are people like this in real life, and I can't stand them, and so I can't stand a fictional character that does this. It's always other people who have to apologize to her, even though she's done exactly what they've done, or even worse. And it's so irritating. It's the only thing that makes the series a bit annoying, really, because otherwise I enjoy it, even though it's no masterpiece. Number 8 is Colin Sullivan from The Departed, played by Matt Damon. Now, The Departed is a great movie by Martin Scorsese, and the first movie for which he received a Best Director Academy Award, which, by the way, is, I mean, bullcrap. I mean, he was supposed to win one way before this movie. I mean, it's a good movie, but he's done better movies. But anyway, it's a movie about moles. So the mob has a mole in the police, and the police has a mole in the mob, and the mole sent by the mob to be within the police system is Colin Sullivan. And that's not what I hate about him. I mean, moles are obviously very morally ambiguous characters, or just morally reprehensible characters, but I mean, you can make a character a mole without being so horrible. The thing about him is that he's really a coward. There's various points in the movie in which it's clear that he's cowardly and very selfish and kind of a wimp. I mean, even though he's responsible for terrible actions, he seems scared by violence and blood and doesn't want to get into it. So he creates all these horrible things and doesn't want to be touched by them in a way. And of course, I mean, it's not as if we don't understand where he comes from. I mean, we understand that he had a bit of a problematic family, and he grew up in this neighborhood where the mobster played by Jack Nicholson was a very strong influence on him. So we understand where he's coming from. It's not as if he was born evil, but still he does horrible things, and he's a despicable character. And you really wish, watching the movie, that he gets punished for it. Does he? I won't tell you. Number 7 is Cameron from American History X. Now, Cameron is basically the leader and head of a white power, white supremacist group. In the movie, Edward Norton plays brilliantly an ex-skinhead who has been in jail and decides to reform. The experience has really changed him. And Cameron is this middle-aged man who would find troubled young white teens and mold them and brainwash them and make them into his little army of white supremacist idiots. And Edward Norton was sort of the head skinhead. He was the greatest achievement of Cameron. Cameron is a horrible person. I mean, it seems that he, for the most part, believes in the things he says. But I think there's an aspect of him of being a bit of a, I don't know, I mean, I think he realizes a bit that he's manipulating people and that some of the arguments used by the white supremacists are just false or very biased. But that's not the point. The point of this character is power and making himself feel important by the use of these kids, by controlling this group, this ever-growing group of white supremacist kids. And he's a horrible character because he really preys on the troubled. Like Edward Norton's character lost his father. So what does Cameron do? He takes him in the group, he encourages all the prejudice and hate and angst that a young kid obviously has when he loses someone he loves, and he turns this pain into hatred and channels this hatred towards all other races, basically. So he's a horrible character. And another horrible thing about him is that while he creates these horrible things, like Colin Sullivan, he tries not to be involved in it, not involved in the violence, in the jail time, and all these things. So he's a horrible, horrible human being, and I hate him. And he's meant to be hated, of course, but these people exist. And the great thing about this movie is that it points the fingers to them. So, great character and despicable character. Number 6 is Bellatrix Lestrange from the Harry Potter series. Now, I'm not saying that Bellatrix is not a cool character. All the characters before her that I mentioned, I don't find cool. I just find them horrible. They're written to be horrible, maybe not, but they're horrible. You may enjoy to hate them, but they're not cool. Bellatrix Lestrange is a charismatic villain. She's absolutely insane. She has great power and she's not stupid. She's very smart and she's basically the right hand of Voldemort in the series. But this said, the amount of the coolness factor is not enough to make you really enjoy the villain and nothing else. I mean, if you take a villain like the Joker does horrible things, but he's very charismatic. He makes some very good points sometimes about the nature of people and the human nature, and he's so extreme and there's so much humor, even though it's black humor in him, that you enjoy him. I mean, in real life you'd be terrified by him and you'd want someone to bring him down, of course, but in fiction you enjoy him. You're glad he's around. He makes the stories more interesting. Bellatrix makes the stories more interesting, but she's also horrible, and I think that she has, as opposed to Joker. Now, characters like the Joker hate everyone. They are pure evil with no prejudice or particular hate. They're just pure chaos. They're like a cancer cell in society. Bellatrix is a racist. She hates muggles and muggle-borns. She's a racist, and she's very spiteful towards them and very cruel. And even though she can be interesting, she's not that developed. I mean, Voldemort is not on the list because while he is very cruel, number one, he's more developed. We know why he is what he is. And number two, it's not so apparent the joy he gets from pain. He feels that he's on a rightful crusade. He enjoys the things he does, but not as much as Bellatrix. Bellatrix is just scary. In a way, she's scarier than Voldemort, even though she's not as powerful. And she tortures people. She has driven Neville Longbottom's parents to madness. She is a horrible human being. Great character, but horrible human being. Number 5 is Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, the TV show, the movie does not exist and it shouldn't exist. Now, like Bellatrix, Ozai has some interesting things to him. He has some charisma, he's incredibly powerful, and he does amazing things during the series. But he is an imperialistic, egotistical, cruel man. He's basically the head of the Fire Nation, that is this imperialistic, cruel country that does the most horrible things throughout the series. He is incredibly mean towards his family. He burns his son's face, Zuko's face, just for speaking out of turn, and banished him. So basically, all that matters to Ozai is having power and having everybody else in the world bow down to his power. He doesn't care about his son, he doesn't care about his wife. He cares about his daughter, but mainly because the daughter is a lot like him. And he's a despicable character, and you enjoy hating him. He's not badly written. He's written to be the bad guy and to be hated. He's very well written and very well performed by Mark Hamill. The voice acting is great. But even though he's kind of cool, it's not like those other villains I mentioned. You still mostly hate him. He's not a villain you want to see around for long. You want him to be defeated because he's horrible. So that's why I put him in the list. Number 4 is Percy Wetmore from The Green Mile, both the book and the movie. Percy Wetmore is basically a bully and a coward. He's the worst guard in the prison in which the story is set. Everybody hates him. The prisoners hate him. The other guards hate him. The warden hates him. Everybody hates him. And he has there's powerful people in his family that give him jobs, so he's kind of untouchable. He knows it. And with this excuse, he's horrible to everyone. He hurts people. He gets great joy from this. And he's basically like a spoiled, cruel child with the power of an adult, which is a very scary combination. And he does horrible things throughout the story, and you just hate him. You wish somebody would just punch him in the face. So this is a character clearly written to be hated, and it works. And I think he's one of the best Stephen King villains, human villains, because these people, you know, some people like this, maybe not so extreme, but people who would be like this in that environment. So I think he's a very good villain and a despicable character. Number 3 is Lisa from The Room. Now, The Room is one of the most enjoyable bad movies of all time. You know those movies that are so bad they're good? Well, The Room is basically king of that. I mean, I think that Troll 2 and The Room are the funniest bad movies I've ever seen. There are riots. So, The Room is basically about the love story of the two main characters and how it breaks up. And clearly the writer, director, producer and actor Tommy Wiseau, very weird guy who made the movie, made it about a personal story. Lisa is a character made to express his feelings towards some ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, I don't know. So, I mean, I don't know how much of the stuff in the movie actually happened. I hope not sort of that the story is not really like this, because Lisa is one of the most evil women in movies. She's cheating, backstabbing, lying, manipulative. All she wants is to have the main character's money while sleeping with his best friend. He doesn't care for anything else. And she does the most cruel things, manipulating the character's friends and his best friend, as I said, and lying to her mother, lying to everyone, saying that the main character beats her. As I said, I don't know the real story. I mean, maybe Tommy Wiseau is crazy and this woman just left him because she was crazy. But as a fictional character, she's despicable. And even at the end of the movie, after a lot of things have happened, she remains selfish and cruel and absolutely uncaring of anyone else. So yes, horrible character from a horrible movie, but a very funny movie. If you haven't seen The Room, watch it with a friend or siblings or whatever, girlfriend, and enjoy it. It's very funny. Number 2 is Light Yagami from the awesome anime series Death Note. Now, I'm not sort of a huge fan of anime. For me, an anime has to be really special to get me into it. And Death Note is a great series. I need to say the basic premise to make you understand why I think this character is despicable. Light Yagami finds something called a Death Note. It's a notebook that allows you to kill anyone as long as you know the name and their face. If you have the face clear in your mind and write their name in the notebook, they will die by heart attack, or if you want, by other means. If you just write the name, they'll die by heart attack. If you write, like, I don't know, car accident, shootout, if it's possible, the notebook will make that death happen. What Light Yagami does is that he uses this notebook to create what he says would be a perfect world. A world with no crime, with only good people. This may sound, you know, on a superficial level, it may sound like a good thing, but it's obviously a slippery slope, and he becomes evil. His corruption is immediate. We see straight away that his main drive is not creating a perfect world, but being the god of the perfect world. He says it often, being the dictator basically of this perfect world. So that's one thing that makes him despicable. Second thing is that not only does he kill people who he thinks are wrongdoers, but also people who get in his way. It doesn't matter for what reason. Even perfectly good people who just want to stop murders are his enemies. So, like, a means to an end is all that matters to him, and I find that to be evil. He manipulates a whole lot of people. He's lying to a lot of people. He's a sociopath that basically just thinks about himself and his goals. And his criteria about wrongdoing is really extreme and horrible, because he doesn't only kill like murderers or rapists, which still we can debate if it's right or not, but he kills thieves, and pickpockets, and I don't know, people who make frauds, and really petty crimes too. It's like all crimes are the same degree of wrong, and he kills them all. And this is particularly irritating because he's a fairly rich kid from a good family who had the luck of having privileges all his life, and so he looks down on any crime without caring about why people do crimes. Why do people kill? Why do people steal? It's not important. They're evil, and he kills them. And obviously he becomes far worse than a lot of the people he kills, and he's a horrible character. And in my opinion, the character was written to be the bad guy. What's great about this series is that the main character is the bad guy, and the good guys are the secondary characters, the characters that try to discover who he is, how he's killing people, and to stop him. I think it's a great thing to make a series in which the main character is the bad guy, but you shouldn't fall in the trick of wanting him to succeed. He's a horrible human being. I want him to lose in the series, and it really creeps me out that there's a lot of people who root for him even though he does all these horrible things. I'm not saying that you cannot root with the idea of a perfect world, but the way he wants to do it and his idea of perfect world is just scary. And I'm even more creeped out by fangirls, girls that think that he's so dreamy. He does horrible things to women in this series. I mean, he's an abusive guy. Why would you want to be with someone like this? It just scares me. So yeah, I think Light Yagami is the second worst, most despicable character in fiction that I know of. Now, number one, the most despicable fictional character I could think of, Bella Swan from the Twilight series. Now, let me be clear about something here. I'm not saying that she's worse than other characters on this series, on this list necessarily. I mean, she doesn't kill anyone, she doesn't physically hurt anyone, although she kind of psychologically hurts quite a few people. It's not so much for me, this list is not so much about the damage these characters make, but how much attention they're given and how much we learn about them. Some of these characters do horrible things but are not very developed. Take Fire Lord Ozai from Avatar. We don't know much about him, just that he's evil. We don't dive into his mind very much. We do a bit, I mean the series develops the characters very well, but he's not one of the main developed characters. Bella Swan is the main character of Twilight. She's the character that we learn to know a lot about. And what do we know about her? She's egotistical, she only thinks about herself, she has everything in the world and still wants to act as if she's a victim. She's a wealthy, white girl, attractive, in suburban America. She has a father who works very hard for her. Okay, her parents are divorced and that must be tough. I'm not saying it's not, but I mean, it doesn't have to turn her into such of a creep. She always looks for guys that put her into abusive relationships. She is abusive in her relationships, and she causes all this damage because even though she sometimes says, no, I'm not worth it, deep down she believes that she's worth all this huge effort. People die and get hurt for her, fall in love with her for no apparent reason. I mean, she's bland as a piece of paper, and she's just a marvel. The fact that Twilight became so popular is creepy, but not sort of amazing really, because what is it about Bella that girls identify with? And that's the creepy thing. Girls identify with her, want to be her. What is it about her? It's a girl, a teenage girl that has everything, like most girls would want, so good house, good school, friends, and even in two attractive boys that want to be with her, not one but two, so all things that a teenage girl wants, but she still has a few excuses to act sad and tormented all the time and tortured and do that teenage, oh I'm so sad thing that all teenagers go through, but not all of us made such a big deal out of it, you know? We've all felt sad, spent time in a room, listening music and all that, but Bella, that's not enough. Everybody has to know she's tormented, and everybody has to sort of be subjected to her sadness and terrible things in her life, well, she would be fine. By the end of the first movie, she should be fine, but she still finds reason to complain, and the story still finds reason to make her look troubled. But she's not, and she's so selfish. It's hard to explain how selfish she is. I mean, she's with the vampire guy that she wanted all the time, even though he's pretty horrible too. I mean, he doesn't treat her very well, he disappears, appears, but that's the thing, you know, girls want bad boys and all that stupid shit. And so she's with this guy, but then she there's this other guy who likes her, no reason. I mean, he's a nicer guy than the other guy. He should find nice girls, but he likes her for some reason. And she leads him on. It's not as if she says, I have a boyfriend. No, as soon as there's a little problem with the boyfriend, she goes with this guy. And so there's this horrible love triangle, and it's all basically her fault. Because if she just had the courage of saying what she thinks and realizing that some things are not right to do to people, it will be fine. But she's just this projection of teenage selfishness, especially, it seems to me, sort of American teenagers' selfishness, that kind of consumistic, present-driven, attention-seeking monsters that apparently are quite common in America. So, I mean, she's a horrible character, and it's scary that girls identify with her. Hopefully most of them will grow out of it and won't become like her. I mean, we all have selfish moments. Hopefully they won't become selfish people like she is. So yeah, she may not be the worst person in this list, but if you consider how much the story focuses on her, that's the disturbing thing, you know? Most of these characters are meant to be the villains or part of the story without being the main character. This story is built around her. Everything is meant for her to be happy, and she doesn't deserve to be happy if this is how she behaves. So this is my reasoning, and this is why she's the number one on the list. So yeah, this was my top 10 most despicable fictional characters. As I said, there's great villains around, but you like them more than you hate them. These characters are more horrible than cool, are more despicable than fascinating, and are more selfish than what can I say? They're more selfish than developed. You know, you don't really learn much about them. They're just horrible people and irritating. So this was my criteria. I hope you liked the list, and I'll see you next time.